UK Prime Minister Theresa May to face no confidence vote late Wednesday. Central African ex-militia chief arrested in France for war crimes. Nigeria opposition candidate signs peace accord ahead of February elections. Welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, along with my colleague Rama Young with the Business News.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up a little later in the hour. Tanzania has signed a deal for a $3 billion power plant in a game reserve. And Nigeria is gearing up to cut oil production in the wake of last week's deal between OPEC and non-OPEC oil producers. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming up for you in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
All right, thank you, Rama. We begin in the UK, where the ruling Conservative Party says Prime Minister Theresa May will face a no-confidence vote. It comes after her controversial move to delay parliamentary votes on her Brexit deal. Instead, May toured European capitals in an effort to salvage the agreement after MPs slammed its provisions on the issue of the Irish border. However, while she did get some sympathy from her European Union partners, the bloc firmly rejected any hint at renegotiating the deal. Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May has addressed the media outside 10 Downing Street after it was announced that the Conservative Party will hold a vote of no confidence in her leadership.
I will contest that vote with everything I've got. I have been a member of the Conservative Party for over 40 years. I've served it as an activist, councillor, MP, shadow minister, Home Secretary, and now as Prime Minister. I stood to be leader because I believe in the Conservative vision for a better future, a thriving economy with nowhere and nobody left behind, a stronger society where everyone can make the most of their talents, always serving the national interest. And at this crucial moment in our history, that means securing a Brexit deal that delivers on the result of the EU referendum, taking back control of our borders, laws and money, but protecting jobs, our security and our precious union as we do so.
Prime Minister Theresa May says a leadership challenge triggered by conservative lawmakers could jeopardize Britain's divorce from the European Union. May made the remarks ahead of the no confidence vote.
We need to ensure that we do not increase uncertainty and create more uncertainty. And the public voted to leave the EU. They want us to secure a deal that delivers on that result. And we shouldn't risk handing control of the Brexit negotiations to opposition MPs in Parliament, because that would mean risking delaying Brexit or even stopping Brexit. None of that would be in the national interest. So I think we need to get on and deliver a good Brexit for the country.
According to the rules, May could be toppled if a simple majority of conservative lawmakers vote against her, though a significant rebellion could also undermine her position. At least 153 of her 315 conservative lawmakers had expressed public support for her. All of this came after her controversial move to delay Tuesday's parliamentary vote on her Brexit deal. Instead, May toured European capitals in an effort to salvage the agreement after MPs slammed its provisions on the issue of the Irish border. All right, for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Richard Bestick in London. Richard, thank you for joining us. Now, Richard, can you give us an update on developments over there in London?
Yeah, well, we're pretty much in a holding pattern here. It's now 5 o'clock. Within an hour, the members of Parliament from Theresa May's ruling Conservatives will begin voting, and we should have a result by 9 o'clock, and the comes after she makes a pitch to those MPs, those members of Parliament, telling them why she should remain on the job. Now, is she going to make it? Well, all the indications so far are that she will win the vote. But that doesn't mean she's out of the woods by any means. And the focus will then turn to how much of a majority she got. If you cast your mind back years and years ago, decades ago, Margaret Thatcher once was in the same position. She didn't lose a vote, but she didn't have a big enough majority to continue. Her authority so undermined she had to go from now.
All right, Richard, can you zone in perhaps on the reaction to this no confidence vote and what the potential impact may be on Brexit?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? What impact will it have on anything? The situation at the end of this display of what some people are calling petulance on the part of some members of Parliament for the Conservatives will be pretty much not much at all. In other words, the situation will remain the same. If Theresa May remains in place, she remains in place with all the same intractable problems that existed before. She has a deal agreed and sealed with the European Union that cannot be changed, but she can't get through the Houses of Parliament. And she knows that, as you heard there earlier, she's not getting any support from the European Union to the extent that she can reopen negotiations. So win or lose, Brexit remains pretty much in the same situation. If she loses, of course, there is the possibility a new leader will go for a hard Brexit. In other words, a no-deal Brexit, which government figures, government studies have shown would be catastrophic for the British economy.
All right, Richard, thank you for your insight analysis. That was Richard Bestick reporting from London. Moving on now, a former Central African militia leader, Patrice Edouard Nguesson, has been arrested in France for war crimes and crimes against humanity. This follows a warrant of arrest issued by the International Criminal Court in December 2018. The former anti-Balaka militia leader is accused of fueling violence in the west of the country for about a year, starting around December 2013. The court gave no further details of Nguesson's arrest. He is expected to be transferred to the court's detention center in The Hague once French authorities have completed legal formalities. All right, for more on this, we are joined by Olisir Miocic in Paris. Olisir, thank you for joining us. Now, what more do we know about Nguesson's arrest?
So we know that the French authorities were asked by the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands, in The Hague, to go and arrest Patrice Edouard. And that is something that they have done. We believe in the early hours of this morning. He's now being held in detention here in France before he will then be sent off, we believe, to The Hague. Now, this all revolves around what happened in 2013 after the fall of President Bouzize. Now, it's been alleged by the International Criminal Court that the gentleman in question has actually been involved in the use of war crimes and the use of crimes against humanity, namely murder, attempted murder, the use of child soldiers, directing attacks on civilians. This is something which Ngoya is completely denying. He says that it is not something that he has taken part in, and it's something that he will now have to stand trial in the Netherlands.
All right, so what will happen next? Give us an indication.
So it'll be a formal extradition request that will have to go through between the Netherlands and France. That can take a little bit of time, but there is a mechanism within Europe in order to facilitate quite a speedy transfer of prisoners between countries, known as the European arrest warrant, which then can be bypassing all of those sort of bureaucratic steps that usually come about in France. It'll then be interesting to see how long he'll be in pre-trial detention for before he actually gets a trial date. Now, this has all been planned since 2013, this court case, which was referred to the International Criminal Court by the Central African Republic itself. And it follows the arrest of another Central African Republic leader from the anti-Balaka movement. And we're hearing from the French news agency, the Agence France Presse, that one of the leaders of the anti-Balaka movement is saying that 2 arrests in such a short period could lead to more unrest in the Central African Republic. So he is appealing for calm amongst his followers, and he's hoping that there will not be any more violence in the country.
All right, thank you for that update. That's Oliver Miocic reporting from Paris. Moving over to Nigeria, where Nigeria's main opposition presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar has signed an accord aimed at ensuring that next year's elections in the troubled nation proceed peacefully. Abubakar had failed to join his main rival, President Muhammadu Buhari, in signing the accord, with his aides saying he had not been officially invited to the ceremony. The accord was brokered amid fears that the elections could be marred by violence and vote rigging. All right, time now for a short break. When we return, Egyptian military leader says it's killed 27 militants during new operation. In South Sudan, schoolgirls are now being taught self-defense skills.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Kenya Now, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has pledged to continue supporting peace efforts in South Sudan. This follows a peace deal between the administration of President Salva Kiir and former rebel leader Riek Machar. Speaking during Independence Day celebrations in Nairobi, Kenyatta also praised the resumption of diplomatic ties between Ethiopia and Eritrea, saying it was positive and a positive step for the region. A peace deal signed between the two countries in July this year formally ended one of Africa's longest hostilities. President Kenyatta has pledged to cooperate with countries in the region on security matters and to fight extremism, vowing to replace bullets and grenades with trade and investment.
To attract investors, both local and foreign, we as a government have been investing heavily in power generation, roads and railway, education and health. It is also the reason we are working hard to make it easier for business to be conducted in Kenya. If we cannot compete effectively, our dreams of a prosperous country with decent jobs for all will not happen.
At least 27 suspected militants are said to have been killed by Egyptian security forces in the restive northern Sinai Peninsula and along its porous border with Libya. The military says forces destroyed 342 hideouts and weapons depots and dismantled 344 explosive devices. More than 400 suspects are said to have been and detained, together with around 3,000 illegal migrants. Egypt launched a nationwide operation against militants in February. It has struggled to defeat a long-running insurgency in the Sinai that is now affiliated with the Daesh group. All right, for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Adel Al-Marouki in Cairo. Adel, thank you for joining us. Can you give us a few more details on the developments?
It's part of the Egyptian, has been dubbed as the biggest military operation taking place in the country to eradicate terrorism. Operation Sinai 2018 started last February. It's almost approaching its year, and this is the 30th announcement, the 30th progress report that has been announced by the Egyptian armed forces. As you've mentioned, the numbers are quite staggering. The numbers, over 400 have been arrested. Some of them are suspects to have been involved in previous terrorist attacks, and others are convicts at large who have been sentenced to prison time or life in prison, or sometimes even death penalty, and have been escaping in the Egyptian desert landscape where it's quite rough, and most of the militant groups have been taking shelter there. The progress that happened this week also indicates that militant activities has not been entirely suppressed. The army says that it has found over 80 motorcycles unlicensed, more than 2 dozens of 4x4 vehicles that are used for desert travel have been found to be part of the militant activity. And as you've said, the authorities have defused over 300 improvised explosive devices, all planted and were targeting to come near or attack security forces in that region. That's just what has been going on, beside, of course, the 4 more underground tunnels have been discovered, all of this in North Sinai. On the western borders and the southern borders with Libya and Sudan, there have been immense breach. More than 2,800 illegal migrants have been caught before they crossed the Egyptian border illegally. Vehicles that are believed to be packed with weapons and explosive devices have been targeted by the armed forces as they try to breach inside Egypt, smuggling militants, weapons and explosives.
All right, for a while now there have been mainly reports from the government with nothing from militants, yet there have been reports of attacks in the Sinai region. Is the government playing a public relations campaign in your opinion?
Well, definitely. What we're seeing now, first since 2013 and since the extreme rise in militant insurgency in North Sinai, the government has blocked access to media to get first-hand information from what is happening inside that region. But since then, the alternative was and our campaigns led by the Egyptian armed forces, releasing videos of what the military troops are doing on the ground. There are sometimes visuals and pictures of those captured, arrested, or even killed in the clashes that takes place as Egyptian security forces try to maintain a stronghold, to maintain full control over all parts in northern Sinai. There has been a significant progress as reported by the Egyptian armed forces, but we still don't know when this operation is going to end. Back last February, it was primarily given a 3-month deadline, an ultimatum from President El-Sisi to accomplish its mission. But as the Egyptian armed forces dug deeper into the Sinai, they discovered huge infrastructure, huge bases, hideouts, and huge access to weapons and explosives. All of this has extended the operation indefinitely, and this is still one of the main questions, is for how long will Operation Sinai 2018 continue? From what we've been hearing from the armed forces and the president, they will take as much time as they need to make sure that there is no further threat from these terrorist groups to the Egyptian security forces and the entire country.
All right, thank you for that reporting. That was Adel El-Marouki reporting to us from Egypt. Still in Egypt, the country is hosting counter-terrorism military exercises. 4 countries have joined the initiative, which is the first multinational activity announced since Egypt established the Sahel-Saharan Counterterrorism Center last June. Here is Adel El-Marouki once more.
The birth of a multinational African counterterrorism force is maybe underway. Military troops from Egypt, Nigeria, Sudan and Burkina Faso are gathering in the Egyptian Mediterranean coast for the first continental military exercises Egypt hosts in its newly established Sahel-Saharan Counterterrorism Center. Cairo chose its biggest and newly established Mohammed Naguib military base to host the drills. The training exercises started on Sunday and will continue to Friday. Egypt began the program with displaying some of the arms and technologies Egypt uses in counter-terrorism, which the troops will be training with. They practiced engagement against different threats, including hostage situations. The exercise aims to create common understanding among African forces and train them to take quick responses during urgent tactical encounters. It's a step that would greatly help the region if multinational African counter-terrorism forces are ever needed. Last June, Egypt has inaugurated the Sahel-Saharan Counterterrorism Center. Cairo aims to make it a regional hub to fight groups like ISIL, which activity extends from Nigeria to Somalia, threatening all 29 members of the community of Sahel-Saharan states. Adel Mahwi, CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, the United States is expected to announce a new strategy for the continent. The plan, drafted by the White House National Security Council, will be presented on Thursday at a Washington think tank. The strategy expects to fend off attempts by DPRK and Iran to make inroads through economic investments and arms sales. It, however, does not include counterterrorism measures, aid, funding, diplomacy, or intelligence gathering. And back to West Africa, Gambians are looking forward to having a new constitution after President Adama Barrow inaugurated an 11-member commission to review the current one. The commission, which is touring the country creating awareness about its mandate, has heard suggestions from citizens especially concerned about ensuring good governance. CGTN's Richard Nta reports.
The dusty lot in the middle of Kiang Kaif village in rural Gambia serves as a village meeting ground. Here locals have assembled to contribute to the country's constitutional review process. For the last month, commissioners from the newly formed Constitutional Review Commission have crisscrossed the country. They want to know what locals want included in the new document. The question of citizenship and how to acquire it elicits varied opinions. In many villages, locals have also raised questions about whether the death penalty should be abolished. And the sessions never end without the question of how to ensure credible elections and good governance coming up.
Elections should be in 1 day. Parliamentary and presidential election should be in 1 day, and maybe marble system we should, leave that to now, and go in paper elections. This is what other countries are doing.
Since the Gambia's former president Yahya Jammeh lost his seat in a contested election, Gambians have developed a keen interest in local politics.
Our hope is that there will be a new constitution that will pave the way for a third republic, a constitution that will stand the test of time, be inclusive, and ensure our democratic process is on track.
In 2016, Adama Barrow defeated Jammeh in a disputed election. Jammeh's 22-year rule was characterized by allegations of human rights violations. The current constitution was drafted during his reign. Commissioners want to produce a document that reflects the change that has taken place since then.
The Constitution has undergone numerous amendments, well over 50 amendments. And it was felt that continuing to amend the Constitution wasn't being helpful to many people. It has caused some confusion to the extent that we have different versions of the same Constitution.
They are raising a lot of issues, especially coming into the issues of let's look at the powers that our executives have. How can we make sure that the power is not centered around one end, but we decentralize the powers?
Once the draft constitution is complete, commissioners will return it to the public for further discussion before submitting it to the government for approval. As the constitutional review process gathers steam in the Gambia, the Constitutional Review Commission is aware that it has just 18 months to condense the views and opinions of citizens into a document that will safeguard their rights as well as those of future generations. Wilkisanya was CGTN in the Gambia.
Members of the UN Commission on Human Rights have ended a 3-day visit to Sudan. This visit marks the first time the Commission will travel to the region since the signing of the revitalized peace agreement in September. The chairperson of the Commission on Women and Children, Mona Abu Al-Azaim, says that they have looked into the entire human rights situation in the country and has hinted at a possible establishment of a human rights office. The visit is part of a schedule to cover 4 countries, South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda, as their probe into human rights violations in the Eastern African region continues.
In the tour of the delegation of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Eastern and Southern Africa, the meeting was held with the National Commission for Human Rights, and the meeting was held by the Commission Office. We discussed several things, and the head of the delegation, Mrs. Juliet, confirmed that the country office would be a substitute for independent rapporteur, of course. That was according to request of the government of Sudan.
Schoolgirls in South Sudan are being taught to protect themselves against sexual assault. The lengthy civil war has led to increase in violence against women and girls, mostly by armed men. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports on the charity initiative that's empowering young women.
These young women are learning self-defense skills so they can protect themselves from sexual assault.
The whole aim of our curriculum or the program for ladies or girls is just to get away. Yeah, we can hurt the person maybe by poking the eyes. We just poke the eyes. When the person feels the pain, we run away. We can't stand again and look like either the person is coming, I fight back and I win. No.
Medical charity Doctors Without Borders reports 125 women and girls were raped last month alone in Bentiu in the northern part of the country. And it's not just about fighting.
If a man wants to rape you, there are things you can do to escape. There are also those who call young girls to their houses with the intention of raping them, or bring some gifts to young girls to entice them, then rape them. I now know what to do when such men start approaching me.
The training is good for us to learn when someone is wanted to attack you, you will know how to defend yourself.
Ujamaa Africa also runs a program for boys. They learn about the effects of rape on girls and on themselves, including possible jail time.
Sexual violence is punishable by law in South Sudan, but most cases don't make it to court, partially because of a long outstanding mistrust of the justice system and partially because during the war, people relied on traditional approaches to settling disputes.
Ujamaa Africa raises taboo topics with young people, opening the door for such discussions in classrooms.
This program is helping teachers as well. Some teachers were shy to talk about issues such as rape or sexual violence to pupils, but with this training, they are now freely talking about it, and we are beginning to witness a reduction in the number of girls getting pregnant here in the school.
It's hoped that by training young people and raising awareness, there will be far less sexual violence in future generations. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
China has launched a burns treatment program in Egypt under the UN initiative, Every Woman, Every Child. The China Partnership Program seeks to treat women and children affected with burns. The program will also train medical staff and public hospitals and offer funds to establish centers for researches on technology on burns treatment till the end of 2020. Burns is ranked as the 11th major cause of death for children aged 1 to 9. Statistics show that 265,000 people die each year from burns. Children.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
All right, let's take a recap of our stories making headlines. UK's ruling Conservative Party says Prime Minister Theresa May will face a no-confidence vote. It comes after her controversial move to delay parliamentary votes on her Brexit deal. Instead, May toured European capitals in an effort to salvage the agreement after MPs slammed its provisions on the issue of the Irish border. A former Central African militia leader, Patrice Edouard Ngasona, has been arrested in France for war crimes and crimes against humanity starting around December 2013. At least 27 suspected militants are said to have been killed by Egyptian security forces in the restive north. And drafted by the White House National Security Council will be presented this week at Washington's think tank. The strategy expects to fend off attempts by North Korea and Iran to make inroads through economic investments and arms sales. It, however, does not include counterterrorism measures, aid funding, diplomacy, or intelligence gathering. And that is a wrap of your top stories. All right, over to Rama Yang with the latest in business.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business news. Agreement last week.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor,
to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market.
It's colorful,
vibrant and exotic.
CGTN stands at the gateway
to Europe, Africa and the Middle East.
From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Let's start in East Africa, where Tanzania's government has signed a deal for the construction of a $3 billion hydroelectric power plant with an installed generation capacity of 2,100 megawatts. Now, if completed as currently designed, this will more than double Tanzania's electricity generation capacity. The power plant and the dam will be built in the Selous Game Reserve. It's a UN-designated World Heritage Site in the southern end of the country. The dam will be built by an Egyptian consortium. Arab contractors will own 55% of the project. EGX-listed El Saudi Electric will hold the remainder. The country's president, John Magufuli, has pushed ahead with this project despite concern about the potential environmental damage. He says improved tax revenue collection has given the country room to pay for the project. Over in West Africa, Nigeria's daily oil production is expected to fall by a minimum of at least 44,000 barrels a day. This comes as a result of the resolution by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, to cut output. CGTN's Phil Ihaza has the details.
According to OPEC, the move to reduce daily oil production effective from January 2019 is targeted at helping regulate crude oil prices on the international oil market. A statement released after a meeting of 15 member countries in Vienna, Austria, reports the cut is subject to a review in April 2019. Nigeria, Africa's largest producer of oil and a member of OPEC, produces around 1.7 million barrels of oil per day. The country has the capacity to produce over 2.5 million barrels per day, but has not been able to achieve this since 2016 because of militant activities in the oil-rich South-South region of the country. The militants claim despite many decades of oil production, the government has underdeveloped the region. Africa's most populous country relies on oil as its major source of revenue to cater for its nearly 200 million population. It assured citizens that the country will not be affected by the cut in oil output next year. A global slump in oil prices in 2014 led the country to a recession in 2016, and since then the Nigerian government has been making efforts to diversify its oil-dependent economy to other sectors like agriculture. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Onto another oil producer. Angola's state-run oil and gas company Sonangol is ramping up efforts to lure foreign investors into the sector and halt a decline in crude output. Sonangol is looking for investment ahead of its licensing round that's going to be held next year. Now, the company is looking to have exploration in as many as 10 offshore blocks. This is the first tender for exploration rights that's being put forward to the market since 2011. The government transferred the role of concessionaire from Sonangol to enable tax breaks to companies that develop marginal fields too. Angola used to pump about 1.5 million barrels of oil last month. That's down from about 1.87 a day in September 2014. Now, without new capital flowing into new projects, the oil ministry is warning that output could fall to as low as 1 million barrels of crude a day by 2023. Onto the consumption side of the energy market, South African motorists are getting a bit of relief from a drop in fuel prices. Petrol prices over there have fallen by just over 13 US cents, taking the price of a litre of 95 octane to $1.20. That, however, is still pretty close to record highs. South Africans have never paid this much for petrol before. Fuel prices have soared by over 20% this year, with 8 consecutive hikes in the last 7 months. CGTN's Richard Nta filed this report from Johannesburg.
While South Africans love to drive their own cars, the most popular mode of transport is still taxis. Despite 8 petrol price hikes this year, the minibus taxi industry didn't raise fares. Solomon owns a fleet of taxis. He runs them locally in Mafeking in the Northwest Province. It's been a rough year for him.
It affects us very badly because the parts are expensive and you are not being subsidized. You have to service, you have to pay the driver, you have to maintain the vehicle, and you have to pay the insurance as well as the tracker. So there are lots of things that you have to pay out of the business. You are just making just to live, a living wage.
They're often unsafe and risky, but minibus taxis are the cheapest and most efficient, more especially for people traveling out to outlying areas and villages. They carry almost 70% of commuter traffic and are used mainly by low-income consumers.
It's not easy to just jump from 20% because of the high competitions. We are competing against the train, and also there are buses. The increases that have been effected are normal fare increases, which are normally done every year between June and July, and some between November and December. They don't make any much of a difference, but to keep ourselves into business, we've got to live with the little that we are getting.
Many taxi owners are also paying off high-interest loans for their vehicles. Servicing this debt became more expensive when the Reserve Bank raised interest rates by 25 basis points in November. E-toll bills are also piling up.
We're considering matching for a whole lot of things, petrol being one of them. Tolls, you go to each and every taxi owner, they are sitting with a bundle of taxi toll bills which they cannot pay, and unfortunately those taxis must use that road.
We would like the government to intervene so that we can at least know how to run our business to improve others' lives, because the buses are being subsidized and we taxis are not, but we are using the very same routes for the passengers and everything. So if they can subsidize us, we will appreciate it.
The fuel price drop comes at an important time as thousands of people from the city make their way home for the holidays. But it's unlikely the taxi industry will be able to sustain these fares next year, with government looking at raising fuel taxes. Smita Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's go back to West Africa to any wrongdoing. Nigeria is MTN's biggest single market. It accounts for about 1/3 of its annual core profit. The network serves about 50. They were there to discuss a coherent approach to impact investing in East Africa.
We welcome the formation of the National Advisory Board. It will belong to this global network, but more importantly, it will also provide learnings and then proposals to government on how we can expand the stimulation of social impact investment within Kenya.
And Tunisia has unveiled its first locally made car. To show it off, the country's premier used it, in fact, in a plenary session in Parliament when they were discussing the 2019 budget. Wally's, as the firm is known, was set up in 2006 by a group of friends and entrepreneurs. It's since then created hundreds of jobs and revived the local economy in Tunis. Here's CGTN's Richard Nta with this report.
This procession of armored vehicles is heading to Parliament in downtown Tunis. The smallest car is one of the fastest and most attractive vehicles in the North African state. It is the Premier's new 4x4 ride, a Wally's car. For a decade, this company has been manufacturing the first Tunisian car. It has recently gained in popularity in Europe, the Mediterranean basin and the Gulf region. The project was the dream of two brothers who started a whole production chain with just 2 holiday cars. They borrowed around $70,000. Omar, the CEO, says financing the business was a challenge.
At the beginning, yes, it's for most of the people it was crazy. It was a crazy idea, and even more for the bankers. We didn't find one banker helping us in the project. We looked for love money, like friends and family money, and we promised to everyone if the project wasn't going to succeed, they were going to have a prototype of the car.
That was 10 years ago, and some relatives and friends believed in their idea.
We had 2 prototypes, and we had around 15 people giving us their money, so it was hard to divide the 2 prototypes into 50 people, but you know, when you're an entrepreneur, this is our role, is to find ways to convince people to believe in your vision, to believe in your project.
Wally's car headquarters are located in a popular neighborhood in the suburbs of Tunis. The manufacturer has created many direct jobs and revived the local economy. Hossein was born and raised in this area. The car manufacturer employs around 60 graduates. Wally's car has also created 200 indirect jobs.
I was trained by Wally's car. I have learned new skills in this promising automotive sector. I feel at home when I come to the company. Working here has changed my life.
This year, Wally's car has produced 300 units. 50% were exported to France, Italy and Spain, while 150 vehicles were sold to Tunisian consumers. The car manufacturer plans to increase the production capacity. New models will be launched in the next 3 years.
Now we are raising funds in this year, and our goal is to be in 2020-21 to go up to 2,000, 3,000 cars. We will have also a pickup to launch. We're going to have an electric model to be launched and a city car.
The Giga brothers, founders of Wally's car, have developed a successful business model, though they were never predestined to become entrepreneurs in the automotive sector. The initiative has encouraged many Tunisian youths to start their own enterprises. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
I'll leave you there for the time being, but here's what's coming up at the top of the hour. We'll be going back to the United Kingdom. Theresa May, will she be dethroned, as it were, by the Conservative Party? We'll have some answers for you at 1800 GMT, pretty much the same time that MPs start to vote on the matter. See you then. For now, though, back to Richard.
All right, thank you, Rama. This is Africa Live on CGTN. We have a lot more news coming your way after the break, including scrape for sale still persist in Egypt despite modernizations.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back now to Egypt. Each morning, traders roam the streets with carts with the Italian phrase "roba vecchia" as their trademark cry. The phrase has been used since the early 20th century for junk collectors looking to buy or trade unused household items for residents. This is their story.
The familiar rhythmic chant of rag and bone collectors echoes every morning as they roam the Egyptian capital to collect used and unwanted goods. From household items such as beds and kitchen utensils to major home appliances like old washing machines and stoves, Mina the Rag and Bone Man is interested. Over the years, the job has seen many changes, from apparent ones like shifting from handcarts to donkey-drawn carts and small vehicles, to less obvious changes.
Now there are fewer. People now know everything, and if you have even a small piece of iron, they ask for a price based on price per kilo. In the past, it was just sold as a single item. Even copper mixed with iron was just sold as an item. But now people know everything.
People who want to make some quick cash off items that they no longer need trace the sound coming from the loudspeakers and find Thabet. Then the bargaining begins until Thabet and the seller agree on a price. But over the years, the job has become harder as people are more aware of the value of the items that they are selling.
In the past, we used to go into people's homes and we would find antiques and valuable items. But now with the internet, anyone who has something to sell offers it for sale online. Then they come and say many people are interested in taking the items. And so it has become harder for us to get these items. We take them for the highest price and try to sell them at affordable prices to the poor who want them.
The ever-changing nature of the job has brought on some changes. Though arguably one of the oldest trades in Egypt, the rag and bone trade still finds a way to stay relevant in our ever-changing world. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
All right, time now for a short break. We have your sports news next. Here's a look at what's ahead.